And will we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Nocita, Commissioner Neely, Commissioner West. Aye. Commissioner Smith. Here. Commissioner Norris. Here. Commissioner Walters. Here. Commissioner Shaw. Here. Commissioner Crocker.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson. Here. Chair Slack.
Here. Okay. Citizens' comments. Do we have any? No. Future agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on. Adopted agenda. We do have a request for one revision of the order of the agenda. We need to put item 5C at the top of the list.
We can't log in here.
We have a login issue. It wasn't me this time.
I think everybody's trying to do it all at once.
Oh, it's working. It's working. It's working. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It should be. Are we all ready now? Everybody's monitor's working? Okay, we'll move forward. Then I guess we're all okay with the one change on the agenda. Any other changes? Then we'll move forward with item 5A. I'm sorry, item 5C. Resolution number UR10-03, amending resolution number UR10-01, adopting the urban renewal budget for fiscal year 2010 to 2011. Mr. One.
Thank you, Chairman Slack and members of the commission. Thank you for bringing me forward. So we have, this should only take a couple minutes. I know last time we sort of like go back in, and I've made a couple little changes, mostly cosmetic to the resolution. I just, you guys we're so short on time, I didn't take the time to mention those, but you know, as this whole saying, there's not time to do it right the first time, there's always time to redo it, so here we are. I've put the comparison of what was and what is, and you can see we've changed a couple words, changed the word for agency to commission, took out number 2, and highlighted the 3 areas of the resolution, which are adopting the budget, making appropriation, and declaring tax increment. And one of the other things, the original option resolution talks about using option 1 of the code, and we're not an option 1 agency anymore. But, so anyway, what we're going to have to do, you already approved UR 1001. So that's a real resolution the way it was, and you'll have to be sign that. Then I'm asking you to approve resolution 1003, which makes these changes. And I repeat, in substance, you're not changing anything in substance for adopting a budget for $10,783,600. We're making appropriations by the categories for $10,783,600, and we're asking the assessor to assess the maximum allowable under the division of taxes.
Do we have a motion? Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for resolution number UR10-03, amending resolution number UR10-01. Do we have discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
No.
Commissioner Norris.
Aye.
Commissioner Walters.
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. So that was 7 yes and 1 no. The amendment passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, minutes of June 2nd, item 5A, minutes of June 2nd, 2010 regular meeting. And we have those in front of us. Do
Move for approval?
we have a motion
Second?
and a second? Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Would you call a roll?
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Abstain.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson? Chair Slack?
Aye, so that would be 7 in favor, 1 abstention. Minutes are approved. Item 5BE, resolution number UR 10-02, design guidelines. Mr. Bentlow.
Thank you, Chair Slack. This was continued from June 2nd. At that time, the commission had a number of mostly wording changes to the storefront improvement program application process and requirements. And in your packet, you have those outlined in red. And I'll just briefly summarize those. In the first paragraph, we took out the word downtown in reference to the urban renewal district. There was no reason to make a distinction there. The idea is that this process applies to anything in the urban renewal district. Under maximum grant amount, we took out that language. It really wasn't necessary, where it says for each structure up to $20,000 for a total project cost of $40. So we took out that total project cost reference. One of the other changes under eligible improvements was the restriction from using these grant monies for signs, regular signs that would have tenant names on them. So that was added. Down towards the bottom under the grant application process, added the words, and again, this is reference to someone applying for a grant over $20,000, where restoring a facade to its original condition is the issue. And we added the statement that submittal of the best available information, including photographs and other documentation. So that was added. And I believe the only other substantial thing was page 3 of 4, the very last sentence in red there. And that basically states that changes that significantly affect the appearance or structural integrity of the improvements must be reviewed by the Urban Renewal Commission. And that was in response to a concern that if somebody applies for a grant and you approve the grant, then it goes to planning, and planning finds that it's different than what was originally approved by you, then it would come back to you. So that was in reference to that concern. So other than that, everything else is the same. We're asking you to approve, again, the resolution, the program application process and requirements, and the evaluation worksheet. So that concludes my comments at this point.
Hey, Mr. Smith.
Under the section that was changed, eligible improvements, I think that where it says except tenant signs in parentheses, that actually the parentheses should be behind graphics. So it should say signs and graphics, except tenant signs and graphics, because graphics is essentially the same thing. So I just think that was misplaced.
We can change that.
So that's the only thing. I'm still, not in favor of the removal of section 2, and therefore we'll be voting no.
Commissioner West?
I'm glad you brought up about the sign, Rocky, because I just didn't catch this till tonight, and that is last year on our Main Street program, Lloyd was able to receive some state money that we leveraged with urban renewal money for signs downtown. And in light of some of the citizens in our community that are so irate with us not keeping up to sign code and wanting us to monitor more plastic signs, I was wondering if we could set aside some money. But two ways we could do it: set aside some money for just signs. I don't know if the group is interested in that, or just put the signs back into this. It's just a question. I'm sorry I left it till the very end. I just realized, wow, somebody asked, and I don't think we have any mechanism for a new business to have a sign. And I think you'd all agree that like some of the new signs, the Mi Familia and the Vietnamese restaurant, are beautiful signs, and they really add a lot to. So I'm open to hear what you say. I'll have to say.
Commissioner Crawford.
One quick little thing on the section 1A. Says for grants over 20,000, the applicant must demonstrate how the proposed improvements will restore the facade to its original design. And that's great and it's noble, but some of those buildings you can't. I mean, they're beyond repair, and I guess what we're going to say is some of those buildings then just wouldn't be eligible. Is that right? Or, for instance, one of the buildings that we redid, we couldn't find any pictures of what it used to look like, and not until we actually spent some money to tear off all the old siding could we even see what it kind of looked like underneath. And we tried to do our best with an architect to figure out there used to be transom windows, but I don't know if we want to add a little, we'll restore the facade to as close to its original design, or make every best effort to return it to original design, or if it's just semantics, and the Urban Renewal Commission will be smart enough to know that this is a worthy deed and we're going to grant that much.
Well, there is some flexibility if you look at paragraph 1 under the grant application process on the first page. It talks about improvements to restore facades to its original design, and then it talks about submittal of the best available information, which could include photographs, documentation, showing or describing the storefront original design. And then it also talks about photographs of similar buildings designed by the same architect, or buildings constructed during the same period and style. So there's going to be some discretion when someone applies to the staff for this. And ultimately, if we bring those forward, the commission is going to have the discretion to decide if they think that there's enough evidence that the actual do meet what the original facade is. So I think there's a little bit of flexibility, but ultimately it's up to your judgment to decide if you want to increase the grant amount.
And I'm fine with it. I know some people like, to letter of the word and dot your I's and cross your T's, but if we're fine knowing that it's going to be as good as you can with all the available information, then I'm fine with that.
Okay, Mrs. Peterson.
Yeah, this is just kind of piggybacking on something that Adam and I brought up, but during our Main Street Economic Development committee meeting, the sign issue came up, and I guess my intent, I think I like the way it's worded, but if we had some discretion to allocate something similar that we did last year, where we had something implemented by Main Street Oregon City that was a grant that allowed tenant signs to be done, and that could be outside our grant process, and Main Street would just be in control of that. And I think that was a very successful project, and like some flexibility, or at least I think we can work within this guideline and make an exception for a case such as that, and that would be my only input on that.
Mr. West. You're on there.
For the record, I'm Mrs.
I'm sorry.
Mr. I'm flexible either way on how we do this, and even Rocky, if signs on awnings are way too expensive versus the sign. I'm willing to exclude that, signs on awnings. So whatever the group wants to do here, whether Main Street wants to divvy it up, or if we let just keep some money in here and are open to signs, I don't care.
Commissioner Walters.
We did have a number of discussions in the subcommittee group about the signs, and I think that we were supportive of the Main Street efforts, and it was our understanding that that was a one-time initiative that probably was not going to be repeated, and so we felt that it probably was a good idea to exclude it from the program for the reasons that we discussed at previous meetings. So I would advocate that I would rather see a program that is centered around signs for Main Street. Maybe that could be developed as a separate initiative.
I don't have a sign-ups.
You don't have, well, you can't speak. Commissioner Norris.
I'm just thinking about what Rob has said. There's when you put policies into place, they often last way beyond this, and it clearly indicates that we're trying to restore to the original condition. And I think that what you read, Dan, down in the grant application process says photographs of similar buildings may be considered. I'm not sure that that's as flexible as we've been talking about. Then it clearly says that they're projects of high value and must demonstrate that it's going to be restored in original condition. Is that the only reason? Are we clear that that's the only reason we want to give the large grants is for original restoration? I mean, if so, yes. But if a major rehab that's going to be compatible with Sabres and all the other criteria on that, is that acceptable to us? And if it is, then I think we need to soften the language.
You're on there. Mr. Crock.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, perfect case in point. If we get the owners of the Bank of Commerce building to come to us, and that is a very worthwhile building, in my opinion, to rehab, because they got T111 siding on the side of that thing, and they poured concrete against the building. That's going to be a lot of money if they want to take that anywhere close to what it used to be. And I think that would be worthy, even if they weren't able to take it back to its original condition, to remove that T111 and that concrete and that 60s tile on the side of it. That's going to be very expensive, and I think that would be worthy of a grant, more than $10,000 or $20,000. In which case, we would need a little bit softer language. If they were going to do it, everything except for maybe putting the pillars back in, or if they were going to do it as close as they could and try and match the brick as close as they could, but they couldn't get it perfect back to its original condition. I agree. I would like at least some kind of softening statement in there, either as close to original condition or I don't know. I'm not a wordsmith so much, so. But it seems like it would be worthwhile to get some kind of softening statement in there to make it give the Urban Renewal Commission a little bit more discretion.
Okay, I'm doing. Am I either doing something wrong, or I'm showing wrong?
Yeah, we're back on. I actually agree.
So,
yeah, I think so. I guess, however it's worded, so that the intent is that they're working towards this restoration, and I mean, when you read it, I think it would, even if there was no limit on money, it would be hard to take some of these buildings to the absolute original. I mean, so it is a little. So I don't know how you word it, but maybe that strive to achieve the original, or work something. However, they're pushing towards that direction, and
we could say the improvement will restore the facade closer to its original condition.
Or could you say something like substantially similar to?
Closer I'm not comfortable with his one element on there that gets it closer. That's not really maybe that much, but
substantially, at least brings the idea that it's
Because then there'll be a discussion with this group to determine whether or not that is or not.
substantially conforms with, as Commissioner Walters is. Okay. So can we make that?
Yeah.
Okay, I see everybody's agreeing with that. Commissioner Peterson?
Yeah, mine was just on wording. I was gonna say respect the building's historical integrity, something to that effect, so.
Are you okay with what?
Yeah, that's fine.
Commissioner West?
Back on the signs, I understand that the Main Street program, that was a really a good thing that the state had money in for signs last year to leverage, and they were just getting the Main Street program up, and whether that'll ever happen again, who knows? And so I'm also wondering, in the bigger picture here, do we care what kind of signs? Do you think signs add quality to a business and to our downtown district? And if so, are we willing to put them in and even have this group monitor whether they get $500 or $1,000 or whatever for a sign? So until the Main Street program gets enough money going that they could raise it, but right now they don't have any money.
Commissioner Crocker?
I agree. I think if we have grants available for signs, we at least get to see signs before they're made, so we have some input on. You should have seen the original design to the faux tie sign. I should bring it sometime and show you. And we told them, I actually personally took it and I said, look, I'm going to help you with the design of this because this isn't what we want. And it happened to be on a building that I was involved with, so I wanted to make sure it looked good. But the fact of the matter is, if that grant would have been available, they just would have done that sign, it would have gone up. So it is good to have at least some mechanism to get those signs in front of us until we get some kind of a design code or something. And the one thing I would caution is to bring the signs before this board. It's bad. I mean, you're going to have 11 or 12 different opinions, and we're talking $500 or $1,000, and we could take 2 hours discussing one sign. So I think the Main Street did a good job. We have people who are really concerned with the look of downtown. We have people who are on historic preservation boards and who do a good job, and they take pride in that. And I think it was handled well before, and I would trust that to the Main Street design guideline team again.
Commissioner Smith?
The sign one is a really tough one because when we first talked about the sign grant for Main Street, if it is urban renewal money, and we are essentially granting urban renewal money to a different entity that's deciding how we're spending it, it's still our money. And the concern is if the money is spent on signs that, somehow didn't fulfill our purpose, we have no control over that. So the other part of it is they're all still temporary signs. We've, as a commission, well, I won't say we because I wasn't here, but the awnings for Black Point, we still hear about that. And so when we are not sure that an individual business is going to stay in there for any length of time, we're spending money that could make far more of an impact on a storefront or something like that, rather than a sign for a business that may be gone in a year. I think signs are really key, and some of the signs that went downtown as part of our grant, I think are really great, but some of them aren't. Some of them I kind of cringe at looking at, not necessarily because the signs are bad, but if you take a couple $1,000s to put a nice sign on a really crappy building, then the sign's still not really doing any justice. And there was several signs downtown that I think have really looked nice, but we still don't know, if in 3 months those businesses are going on, the signs will be taken down. And so, with the small amount of money that we have for storefront grants, I would like to see that money going specifically to things that we know that are going to be there a long time. maybe there's some other way to trigger a separate grant for signage, maybe not even under urban renewal, maybe, I don't know what. But I think my concern is with the public is if we're spending urban renewal money, we're hoping that that's going to improve an area for a length of time. We can't promise that with the signs.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Commissioner Proctor was saying. Just in some of the tenants I dealt with, I got to see some that actually implemented the sign program and some that didn't, and the quality of signs that came out of it. I mean, such a sharp contrast. So I just think the fact that these signs, if they go through the process, then it goes to Main Street, it goes through this vetting process, and there's input on the design of the sign, the quality of the sign. I mean, it just improves so much. I think the faux, I keep going back to that one. Yeah. So I keep going back to that one as just a great example. I think that one it draws people in, and a sign can say so much about a business and can ultimately drive the success of that business. I would argue that sign is probably doing some urban renewal work just in the fact that it's probably increasing business and making that business more viable. And the leverage we get out of that, I would argue, is probably worth what we put in.
Mr. West?
Well, here's another thought. What if the minimum that we did, what if the minimum we do is then if it's the building owner that has the business, can the building owner have the sign? He owns the business. And here's another thought on it. I think that the signs, and we see it all over town, I have never seen so many plastic banner signs all over, everywhere. And it looks like it's just like landscaping used to be on a new home. The new home was always built, but the last thing to go in was the landscaping and it looked like heck. But now that it's changed, and we've also codified it so that in our most recent updates of minimum landscaping requirements, that
can we get to a point of a motion?
yeah, somebody has to decide to make a motion.
So,
Yeah. To the thing or to the signs?
Where do you want to decide?
I think we need to resolve the signs separately rather than in the context of the motion.
so what do we want to do with signs?
Okay, signs, I think with signs, I agree. This is a little kind of a separate deal. I think we should leave it out of here, and I think we should maybe on a future agenda item see how we can. I mean, what happened with Main Street is they got some outside grant money, and we matched it. So
Well, no, that wasn't. It wasn't a match. It was what happened is the money that we got from the state had a certain class of people that we could give sign money to, and then urban renewal came along to increase that pot of money, which allowed us to do even more signs than we would have otherwise.
It's kind of a match.
Right,
But
right.
regardless, I agree. I think it's good to offer some kind of financial incentive so we get to at least take a look at the signs and vet the signs. I think to Mr. Smith's concern, Commissioner Smith's concern, I think if we maybe see, I was on the Urban Renewal Commission and I was a part of the group who looked at the signs. So basically, Urban Renewal had a representative at the table. Maybe that's the way we could handle that, is make sure that there's an Urban Renewal representative at the table. Yeah, for when those signs are looked at. So I guess I would say let's table this for now and put it on a separate agenda item where
Well, it's not on the. It's actually not in this. And so what we can do is just move forward with a motion, and then we can, if we all agree, we'll just put it on a future agenda item.
Right.
And then we can move on. Commissioners.
Sorry, I still can't get in my thing. I move that we adopt the storefront improvement program application process and requirements with the change proposed in the area of, I don't know what the wording was. The change that
Substantially, I think was the word.
was substantially
Closer to
closer
the
to the original
conditions.
conforms.
Second.
So that includes all the red line.
We have a second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion, second, and discussion.
We also need to adopt by adopting the resolution, you'd be adopting all the
I
elements.
mentioned all of this.
One question I did have, and I couldn't remember when I read through this several times, is have we set a date? I know we're going to 3 times a year we're going to look at grants. Have we set a date when the first
No,
one will be?
we haven't.
It's
Um,
later.
you know, I think we ought to do that soon. And I've said from the beginning that there's a construction period that some of this stuff can happen more easily in, which we're just moving into. And if we wait too long to do the first go around, we won't give folks a chance to do. So I think we should say like the first deadline should be like the first meeting in August or something. Is that too soon?
Let me take that into consideration after we adopt this.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Shall we?
Commissioner Nocita? Commissioner West? Aye. Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. So that would be 8-4 and 1 against. The motion carries. Rocky voted against it because of the
Section 2. Section 2.
section 2.
We're going to move section 2.
That would have to do with commissioners being
Oh.
allowed to receive.
And just for clarification, the wording about signs is going to stay as
Right.
as is.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we're on item 5B, contract for on-call services for urban renewal. Mr. Bretland?
Yes, this is a result of our discussion at the last Urban Renewal Commission about the question if we should have a consultant, an on-call consultant for urban renewal services. And what you have in your packet is a draft contract. There's 2 items in there that really are optional. I think one is the success audit was one issue that probably isn't that critical because the term of this contract only goes till the end of the calendar year. That's one issue. The other issue was just the clarification of general economic development assistance. Just a clarification that that assistance would only be limited to the urban renewal district. It wouldn't be for the whole city because these are urban renewal funds. And I've also included a page. One of the questions that came up at the last meeting was if at the end of the term of this contract in January, if the commission decides to go for an RFQ, what will the cost be? And what I've done is attached some numbers. This is based on previous contracts. Most of these are from Public Works for professional services, and based on that experience, we were somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 for a smaller contract, and as the amount of the contract increased, so would those costs. So if we were talking about 150,000, I think we were somewhere possibly up to 60,000 in terms of staff costs. But again, that's highly dependent on how involved and how many people we have on review committees, how much time the commission spends, and if they want to review the proposals and those type of things. And then the other thing that Bill Kavaisman will address is the whole bidding process and the ORS requirements. So, Bill, can you summarize that?
Sure. The city's code allows for professional services, credit lines, and other such things, and the Attorney General's model rules that dealt with architecture, engineering, and other types of work under 137 OAR 137.048.0200 allows for a direct appointment when the services provided under the contract have been substantially described, planned, or previously studied in an earlier contract with the same consultant and arranged for the same project. And there's a formal selection process to select the contractor in the original contract. And as I understand it, the services that are provided here are the same types of services that Leland has been providing before, that they were planned and described in the earlier contracts. And that in 2004, when Leland was first hired, there was a competitive bidding process that resulted in the selection of Leland. That contract was extended in 2005 to continue the same work through an exemption process.
I apologize for not using the microphone. And so, as I understand the contract, it does fit the requirements for a direct appointment in this circumstance.
Any questions? Sure. Are you? No. Yeah, Commissioner C.
Thank you. I have want to go back to the last discussion we had on this. I was really more in favor of opening this up to some kind of broader discussion and broader bidding process for kind of rethinking our economic development strategy for the urban renewal district, because as I said at the time and continue to believe, I don't think that a lot of the 2004 and 2006 economic development strategies and the projects described in them are really viable in today's economy. They were really based on the economy before the 2008 crash. And a lot of this just seems to be kind of pushing forward with a lot of that past planning and strategizing. So I'm not really sure that I can support this. Couple of specific problems I have with the work plan too. One, I don't agree that the Blue Heron Mill, developing a strategy for the Blue Heron Mill is germane to the urban renewal area, because the vast majority of the site is not in the urban renewal district. I know that some of the parking lot skirts into the urban renewal district, but I really don't think that. I think that spending money on that really kind of runs afoul of what the urban renewal statute processes prescribe, namely having a public process, developing an urban renewal plan based on that public processes, and then spending money according to the plan. And I mean the Blue Heron site was just left out of that, so I don't agree that we should be that should be part of the plan. I would rather have this scope of work edited to make explicit that that the money that will be spent here will be spent within the urban renewal district. I would urge this commission to rethink this whole scope of work. If you do decide to stick with this services contract, that part of it be directed specifically to examining what today's economy is, how it's structured, and how we can develop an economic development strategy for the urban renewal district that's actually based on the realities of today's economy and the market. I'm not sure I'm supportive of a success audit, because I'm not sure we've had a lot of successes, and it seems to be a bit of public relations. And then I think Commissioner Walters will speak to some of this too. But I think those are my key concerns. I think I'd rather just, if we're going to spend money in this, could be up to close to $75,000 to $100,000 over the course of this year. I think the money would be much better spent gathering information and economic data and statistics, and extrapolating from that what's the real economy, what we can do with it, and help the election campaign this fall focus on where we should be going, instead of trying to put bandages on an economic development strategy that I don't think has any basis in reality anymore. Mr. Walters.
Yeah, thank you. I review these types of requests for Multnomah County, and under their rules, this would not qualify for the exemption. The city has different rules. I'm not real familiar with them, and I'm concerned that we might be in a situation where potentially I'm not comfortable with my knowledge today that we have a legal basis for moving forward with the approval of this contract. So I would like additional time to study that. And then I also have a concern in the scope services. The second bullet item references the Rivers DDA. It says use best efforts to achieve a development agreement for the Rossman site for a project of equal or better quality than defined in the Rivers DDA. As far as I know, this commission has not seen a Rivers DDA, so it's kind of hard to compare it with something we haven't seen. And I'm wondering if we could have a response to that.
In terms of what the DDA said?
Right. We haven't seen it, so that's...
There were references to that the building shells had to meet LEED certification. There was a discussion of a hotel of at least, I can't remember, it was a 3 or 4 star hotel. There was reference to a cinema.
Okay, can we have the specifics on that? Because I don't know, I mean, there is no DDA agreement, so how can we have a document reference there?
I actually think this point was from Doug Neely. I think he was talking about the need that we wouldn't even want to consider anything less than what was proposed.
I agree with the intent. I just think that it doesn't make sense to reference something that nobody has seen. At least I don't think anybody on this. I don't know. Maybe some people have seen it. I haven't. Has anyone else seen it?
I thought I had, but
I have not.
it's been like at the beginning of the draft.
Well, to the extent that you might want to, because when I look at this exhibit, I'm thinking of a guideline or giving our consultants some sort of target to aim toward. So if it would make the commission more comfortable, when you get to the end of that phrase where it says Rivers DDA, we could add the wording subject to a final approval of the Urban Renewal Commission, which is kind of a given anyway, but it would ensure that at least that you're going to be participating in whatever that standard is all along the way. That's how I'm contemplating Mr. Leland working with the commission, is coming here and reporting on a regular basis on his progress. I don't know if that satisfies anyone.
If this were to be some other contractor, would they have the same understanding of what the Rivers DDA qualities are?
I don't think they would. No,
what I'm saying is that we haven't made any determination on whether this work is going to be performed by Mr. Leland or some other party, and so I'm just trying to understand how we would, create that standard.
How you could word this is that use best efforts to achieve a development agreement for the Rossman landfill site that is of a quality approved by the commission. You
I
keep
think
it that
that's
simple.
better.
I mean, that shouldn't happen anyway, but that's basically it.
Thank you. Yeah, that works for me.
Commissioners.
My concern is in the scope of work and the Blue Heron site. I think that it doesn't make sense to plan for a redevelopment of just one parking lot. You know, that whole site is, we don't know what the future of that site's going to be. We don't know if, you know, the timeline of when there will be redevelopment there. And we only have control of one small part, or I mean, in terms of one small part being in the urban renewal district. So I can't see if we really can't do anything other than talk about thoughts about that one particular space, and so it doesn't make sense to think about redevelopment unless you're really addressing the whole site. So I have concerns about that.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the Blue Heron site, first of all, we don't have anything really much working there. In other words, we don't have some hot project that we're going to be bringing forward right now. So I wouldn't see this as a big deal if the commission didn't want to do this. And frankly, if we do develop something there or some opportunity comes forward, I'm going to be going to the city commission, no disrespect intended, but I'm going to be going there first to get some direction rather than here probably. And if that particular piece that's in the district is affected here, then we'll come back to you and say, we've got a little piece here and this is what's happening. So I don't see that as a big factor if you wanted to delete that from the scope.
Proctor.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little different. I'm just a business guy who likes to get good stuff done. I keep thinking we're getting caught up in this minutia here, and it's frustrating because if Blue Heron, the owners of Blue Heron, came to us and said, "Hey, we want to work with the city, we want to work with the urban renewal district, and we want to do something amazing," that could potentially be the nicest single piece of property in the whole state, if not the whole Northwest. Why wouldn't we want all of our best minds talking about it? I don't understand why. We're not saying we're coming up with a new plan or anything, but why would you want to make it so Leland couldn't even talk about that? I mean, that's ridiculous to me. I mean, if we take a step back, what's the reason for having an urban renewal district? Is it to come up with a plan looking 30 years out in advance with step-by-step instructions on what we're going to do and where we can spend money and where we can't? Or is it to eliminate blight, spur economic development, bring in new jobs, bring in new tax revenues? I mean, we're losing sight of the forest for the trees here, I feel like. We're getting too bogged down in this quagmire of minutia. If we had this opportunity to look at the Blue Heron site, how could we say, sorry, that's not on the charter of the urban renewal district, and we can't talk about that? I mean, I just think that's ridiculous. We're not saying that we're instructing Leland to go out and draw up a bunch of plans and do engineering. We're just saying, hey, if something comes up and he can talk about it, then that would be a good thing to do. That would be the right thing to do for the city. It'd be the right thing to do for the citizens. It'd be the right thing to do for Main Street. It'd be the right thing to do for the whole area. I don't know why you would want to take that out of there. It's ridiculous to me. And it seems like, tell me if I'm wrong, you could amend the urban renewal district too, couldn't you? So I don't know why you would want to take that out of there.
Well, I don't want to. I'm only suggesting that. I guess what I'm saying is, I think we are hung up on the minutiae to the extent that we're arguing about whether. I just want to assure you, there's no way possible that if something happens on Blue Heron, I'm not going to be running right back here talking about it to you folks and saying, I think we're going to need some help on this. I've got a lead here and it's hot and I need help. And I'll be coming back saying I'd like to utilize Leland, but I'll be also going to the commission first because right now Blue Heron, the bulk of the site isn't in the district. Now, maybe it should be, and maybe that would be one of the concepts to be studied. But I guess I just want to make sure that we're not, in our zeal to try to move all these projects forward, we still need to try to work within the confines of the rules, and they do get in the way sometimes. I agree with that. But since it's not technically in the district right now, the bulk of the site, and because we're very interested in what happens there and we're engaged, if we find some lead there, we are going to bring it back. And I don't know how to assure you more than that. And I don't think that it has to be a deal breaker just because it's not in here. That doesn't mean we're not paying attention to it. We're not interested in it. In fact, we could even give you periodic reports on what we know and don't know on the site, even though it's not in the district. Because you're right, the commission here, this commission is very interested in what happens in all of the economic development opportunities in the city. And so I guess I just don't think it's a big deal either way, because if it does end up that that's proposed to come into the district, this would be the first place we come to talk about it.
But I guess what he suggested is that Leland wouldn't be allowed to do any work on it because the bulk of Blue Heron is outside of the urban renewal district. And what I'm saying is, if they want to come and say, hey, Leland, you've been involved with multiple projects across the whole country, what do you think about this? And Leland will have to say, well, sorry, I can't talk about that because it's outside the urban renewal district. I just think that's ridiculous. And that's what's being asked there. I think it's crazy.
Commissioner Seaver?
I'll respond to that. First, I don't think it would be precluded that Mr. Leland could analyze the Blue Heron site, but I think if that's the case, that should be paid out of City of Oregon City general funds and not out of Urban Renewal District because in fact Blue Heron site is not in the Urban Renewal District. There was a plan developed with full public process that I'm sure back in the day considered whether to put the Blue Heron District within the Urban Renewal, the Blue Heron site within the Urban Renewal District, and they chose not to do that. So I'm sorry if you find it, getting too bogged down in the minutia, but I think both the legislature and the City of Oregon City, when it adopted the current urban renewal plan, did so with some specific ideas in mind, and I don't think it's our place to overturn that. I would be in favor of examining expanding the district because I'm in favor of reevaluating everything in terms of what the reality is of today. Mr. Leland's own strategies from 2004 and 2006 state quite clearly that the strategy documents should be reviewed and revised based on changed conditions, and we are in thoroughly changed conditions now from what the economy we were in when those documents were adopted. I absolutely don't agree that any money, urban renewal money, should be spent evaluating the prospects for the Blue Heron site.
Commissioner Shaw.
I agree with Commissioner Street. I would like to know why that our district stopped where it did. I need a little history lesson of why the whole site wasn't included in the district. Number two is I'm trying to figure out where urban renewal becomes an advisory council and where we start spending money. Myself, I see that Blue Heron property is probably one of the most wanted developable properties in the county, and why should urban renewal have to provide any financing to do that? I can see us being on an advisory basis to assist in making sure it's something we want, but I don't see why a developer could not come in and do that without us. So if it ever gets to that point where it comes into the district, which I think is good, but I don't think we should have to finance it at all, because it's not like a landfill, it's not like a cove where you need urban renewal assistance. That property should not need urban renewal assistance to it.
Commissioner West?
Well, I'd like to make a motion and move this forward. I'd like to authorize the city manager to sign a PSA agreement for on-call services with Dave Leland Consulting for a term of 6 months, not to exceed the $14,500 a month with the exclusion of taking the urban renewal district out, that does not need to be in there, or taking the urban renewal district out and what was the other change? And the DDA on the rivers. So taking out both those references.
Second. Second. Motion, second discussion.
I'm going to move an amendment. I'm going to move that paragraph 4 be deleted from the scope of services.
Let's see, what, reading contract? Yes.
That was in your motion?
I support that, to not pay for, Blue Heron out of urban renewal funds when it's not within our district.
So we don't need anyone.
Wait a minute, so you mean, you don't want to see the talking about? Are you talking about spending money on the thing, or allowing Leland to actually talk about it?
I don't want to pay for Dave Leland. It's saying basically that we're not paying for Dave Leland to analyze the Blue Heron site at this point, isn't it? And if there's something else, we'll come back to City Commission and.
What you'd be saying is you're not going to pay Dave Leland to talk about it out of urban renewal funds. Because if we need Dave Leland to involve or I need help, I'm going to tell our commission and we're going to find a way. I just want to assure Commissioner Crocker, we're going to be talking about that site if we have an opportunity.
So that's fine, but my fear then is that what's going to happen is the City Commission or Urban Renewal Commission is going to ask for an RFQ, and it's going to take 6 months before anybody's allowed to talk about Blue Heron with an expert. That just seems to be the MO here. We just keep dragging our feet, and so he's very qualified, knows the area.
And they may tell me that. My other bosses might tell me that, but I don't get the sense that I think it's an important site to everyone, and so if we need help, I'm going to be kind of screaming from the rooftops, and they can all say no. You can't have any assistance, but I just don't expect that will happen. But I sure appreciate your concern and trying to push this thing forward and make sure we're all paying attention to it because it's a big opportunity.
Well, I'll withdraw my second and allow Mr. Nacidi to second that. Second amendment, I wasn't clear on that.
My motion is to move forward the agreement with Mr. Leland contracting for the 6 months not to exceed the $14,500 per month. And to take out the reference to his work on the Blue Heron paper mill site and to take out references to the Rivers DDA. So we maintain a quality project on the Roxton landfill.
We have a second.
I have some other amendments to offer. Hers has been seconded, hasn't it? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Now, my discussion items are on the latest here, or is that? I've got Brian, no. Daphne, or Commissioner West, you're off.
I'd like to stop.
Mr. Crocker.
Well, in the spirit of Rocky Smith, I like Dave Leland and I want him to do the work with us. I'm going to vote no because I know it's going to pass anyway. But I want Dave Leland to be able to help us out with Blue Heron, and I know it's going to pass. So Dave Leland, if you watch this, no, I want you to do the work, but I'm voting no because I think you should be able to do more work.
Commissioner Nacidi.
Okay. I have two more amendments to propose. I'm going to move that the next to the last paragraph regarding the success audit be deleted. And on the fourth paragraph from the bottom, I have this proposed amendment that would say, assist the Oregon City Economic Development Department with a strategy, with an expanded strategy for economic development within the Urban Renewal District.
Okay, we have an amendment. We need a second on the amendment. Motion for amendment dies for lack of second. Okay. We have more discussion. Commissioner Smith.
Question, these amendments don't address, Commissioner Walter's concerns, correct?
Correct.
So it's,
Well, the legal.
well, it may go, may not pass anyway.
Mr. Weisman, I mean, you have.
What I can say is, I looked at the process that the Urban Renewal Commission is looking at to do this, and as I understand the procurement process, this is a legal method to do it. I'll acknowledge Commissioner Walter's position that what she noted, that as you know, the Urban Renewal Commission adopted the city's procurement process, and the city's procurement process has a little quirk that has professional services agreements, such as for economic assistance, going through the same route as architectural, engineering, and some other types of services. So it's unusual. It's not the same as other entities, but I'm not aware of anything that prevents the city from doing that. And so I think the process that the Urban Renewal Agency is doing follows the city's procurement process, and that's allowed by state law. So,
yeah. Do we have Commissioner Orr, where you put your hand up? You're not here, so
No, I don't have a.
any other discussion? We'll call for the.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner West?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith? No. Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Walter? No. Commissioner Schwab?
yes.
Commissioner Crawford?
Abstain.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. So that would be 5, 4, 3 against, and 1 abstention. The motion passes. 5, 3, 1. Okay. I think we're down to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have all of you seen the emails I've been sending in the last 24 hours? Okay. We have a very, as one of our commissioners put it, I think in it with a pun, a very fluid situation on the Cove project. And I reported to you about Sladen's failure to achieve a bond, also failure to make payment, to make a Parker, and failure to secure a construction loan. So that's going to potentially could delay the project and cause some other things to occur, depending on what all the parties do with regard to their various positions and seeking remedies on this. So what I've done is I've asked both Ed Darrow and Randy Tyler and Scott Parker, all three, to come here tonight and fill you in from their perspective and answer any questions the commission might have, and have basically a chance to share information about what's going on from their perspective on the project. So with that, I'll introduce Ed and Randy. And there's Scott Parker.
We're back once again.
You can state your name in the city.
Yes, Ed Darrow, the developer on the Cove, and Randy Tyler with Cove. Randy is going to give you a little background on where we are at this time in terms of progress we've made since the first of the year, when the property was actually closed with Parker. And then I will bring you up to date with our conversations with Sladen and what our intent is to move forward.
Sort of as a little introduction, we've been working on this, as you know, for several years. And every once in a while, we run into a little bump along the road. This little bump is a little bit bigger than some of the others, but we always find a way to figure out how to make it work and keep it moving forward. But when I think about the potential of the Cove, and I think about all the combination of things from economic development to preservation of habitat, to all the new recreational opportunities that would be there for people here and people who visit the area, it has the potential to be a really phenomenal opportunity. So we continue to be as enthusiastic as we've ever been about this potential, this project. Just reviewing briefly the conditions from the DDA were broken into two areas: the initial contingency period 1 and contingency period 2. And starting off with almost all these are completed, but so we see where we've been and what we've been up to. Apply for the credit facility, that's done. Public bidding exemption, that's done. The land use approvals, those are all done. And by the way, the land use approvals for the apartment site will be done by the end of the month, so that's not very far off either, and that's ahead of what the original schedule was. Obtaining the credit facility, that's done. Closing the Parker land, that's done. Glacier contract retirement and acquisition of that parcel, that's completed. The CCLC is one item that is yet to be completed, but reasonably far along. Fee simple title to the property to the city, that's completed. The operating agreement, that's completed. Public bidding, again, that's made provisions to allow for an exemption. The security interest in the pre-development works, that's all completed. So those are all items in contingency period 1. In contingency period 2, there are the land use approvals for the apartments, and I just mentioned that those are almost complete. The construction loan is a requirement, and that had been moving forward rapidly with the approval of the appraisal and the other things that go along with that. The bonds, as you know, Sladen was not able to perfect the bond. And our understanding is that wasn't necessarily due to some problem that they had, but rather a problem of changing the ratio of criteria or something like that that was imposed upon them by the bonding folks. Construction easements are completed. There was no default on Glacier, and that property was acquired by the city. The ODOT agreement, ODOT is always a fun thing to do, to negotiate an ODOT agreement. But we, with the city's help, successfully accomplished that. The 99-year lease of the Tri-City property is actually a city responsibility, and that's moving forward. And the joint use parking lot agreement will go together with that 99-year lease. Approval by the agency of the public investment budget, that's taken a long time. And part of the reason it's taken a long time is as we go through the cycle of submitting plans to the city for plan check, the city goes through what they call a red line process and mark the plans up and say, okay, here's what you need to add or subtract or somehow bring into compliance with the city's code. The Sladen folks were waiting to, or feeling like they had to rebid the project every time there was a new cycle of red lines. The preliminary estimates of the additional things that the city added through the red line process was in the several $100,000 range. But that's coming together now, and Ed will talk a little bit more about that as an alternate approach. There's a bunch of things that I won't take too much time going through them all, but things in addition to the development agreement that aren't on that list. And some of those things would include working with the Army Corps and getting the jurisdictional definition that shows where the ordinary high water line is and where the wetlands are and what's a wetland and what's not a wetland in the context of this property. There was also the 1200C permit from DEQ, which is an erosion control permit, and that took a lot of time going back and forth with the city and getting an understanding between the city and DEQ of what was going to be acceptable in terms of erosion control provisions. So we feel like we've accomplished a lot. Some yet to be accomplished. We've got three things relative to the apartment site, the land use, the permit for a foundation, and the land use approvals. We have the city has, as I said, the city has moving forward on the 99-year lease and on the joint use parking agreement. And and one of the final things we had is to come up with an actual public investment, which is basically the budget for the project. So we feel like we've done a lot and feel good about it.
Since all the things that Randy is talking about that we've done since the first of the year is an additional commitment on our part of about $350,000. We haven't been sitting on the sideline, not moving the project forward. We have been a little bit miffed with the efforts of Sladen. The progression of that conversation with the senior people there was a week ago from Saturday. We were told unequivocally that everything was in place, that they would move forward. They would in fact close with Parker. I said that I was having a meeting with the city, which was on the 7th and on the 8th, to discuss how we would move forward and the need for potential extensions. We provided the staff with a projection of additional time that we would think we would need, given Sladen's position that they would need to have additional time. And then I got a phone call on the 9th saying that they were not going to move forward, that they did not get their loan on the 1st of the week, and that they were not going to proceed with the project. Totally out of the blue to us, very disappointing. They also did not make the payment. We were actually waiting on the sidelines until Tuesday to make sure that they weren't going to, in fact, move forward, and that major commitment was $1.2 million that they had to pay Parker. I called Parker when I got the call that they weren't going to move forward, and I said, you know, you need to be prepared to do whatever you need to do in terms of a claim, etc., because they told me they're not going to do it. So we need to wait and see if they're actually going to do it. So that was the 15th was the day they were supposed to write the check, and I did talk with both Scott Parker and his attorney, and they did not, in fact, make that payment. So we consider that they're in default with us. They're in default with Parker. It is an unfortunate situation because we all thought we were going down the path together. But you know, I've been doing this kind of business for over 40 years, and we've done several projects with some of the major people in the country. Weyerhaeuser, we did 2 large projects with them, and even during the course of one of those projects, they asked us if we could bring more capital to the table, and we ended up doing that, but we ended up having to buy them out. So it depends upon what's happening within the entity internally, what's happening in the economy. We all know that we're kind of in a very difficult time right now, having gone through literally 4 recessions in my career in this business. This is the worst I've ever seen it. There's always been funds available, but at a price here, there are not even funds available. Our expectation with Sladen, because we were told that they would be doing probably a 45 to 50% equity to debt. That's very unusual. Your standard is about 20 to 25%. I don't know is if that debt ratio was raised by the bank, therefore they didn't want to do it, or the bank just said they will not do it. I don't have that information. It was a very short conversation. I was told I would be called back to go through the details, and I never got a call back. I made several calls and several emails so that I could report something that in fact shows that we have a credible player with us. So I'm not prepared to continue to move forward with them unless there's something unique that happens. The commitment is right now, because they could not get their bond. We met with Kerr Contractors a couple of weeks ago, right after I was told that they couldn't get their bond. And we have a Kerr gentleman here that is their senior guy, Al Alpin, which is sitting right behind me. And we've been working with them, going through the plans, looking at how we could VE them and go through it. The city, when they took the plans and read them, added about $398,000 of additional costs. Some of those were real things, some of them were discretionary. We would like to sit down with the city and make sure that those items are real things that they really want to have. And then just in the VE process that you go through with value engineering, you will be able to take dollars out. Kerr's estimate right now is very close to what we heard the last ones from Sladen, right around $7.5 million. That's not a big variance to be able to accomplish in a VE process. So we think that we can, in fact, handle that. Our expectation here would be to sit down with staff, continue working through the design process with Kerr, and then come back to the commission and say, all right, here's our plan. It's a real plan. This is how we'll do it. What's happened over the course of my experience in doing this, usually what we do as developers, we will put up all the capital to make a project that is called bankable. We go through the process, we design it, we walk it through the entitlement process, and then we'll go out and find a partner. So right now, we have a very excellent bankable package in my mind. It's as Randy was saying, it works for any number of reasons, not only on the economics, but on what's happening in the community. So we're very committed. We have had a meeting with Parker. He's committed to work with us. So we believe that we can sit down as a team and say, all right, what does it take to get this back on track? It's not going to be asking the city for something extraordinary. It's going to be basically asking for time. It's still a very viable project. In my experience, and I've done over $1 billion of the projects, this is one of the more bankable projects that I've worked on. So it's still very viable. We've had conversations, even as of today, with another player for the Parker site. So our ability to go out and bring these things to the table that's what we do. That's our business. And as Randy says, we're always jumping over hoops and through them. So it's just business as usual, not something that we like to have happen, but that's where we are. So what we would like to request from this commission is that let us sit down with staff. We'll bring all the parties to the table. We'll continue with the effort to bring the value engineering to play and actually get our number down to where it's workable, and then look at how we can in fact crank the project up as we had planned. So if there's any questions, we're certainly open to questions.
Commissioner Crawford.
So with the apartments running into trouble, I know initially it was going to be a medical facility, that piece, is that correct? And then it went to apartments. Is there another possibility that you look at a new, different use now, or is it apartments or nothing?
I think we left our options open when we went back to the process that it could, in fact, and I'll ask Randy because he runs that part of our business, that we could use apartments, we could do medical office. I think we still have those two items in play. So we will still go out and look for those types of players. I mean, it's an excellent site, and when we finish doing phase 1 and phase 2, it's a very buildable site. Right now, it's not. So we obviously need to do that work. One of the best things out there still in the market is apartments. They still do work. You have to have a very good track record, which Sladen has done several of them. They're not merchant builders, meaning they don't build and then resell. They build and they hold, which is one of the reasons that we brought them to the table, because that's a more bankable entity than having somebody just building for sale. There are other entities out there that build for sale that we will be talking with. So we've got a design that's complete. We've got an approval that's just a matter of a couple of weeks away. So it's a very unique thing to have. The highest part of this business in terms of the risk is getting the entitlements. We have those entitlements. Obviously, it's been a lot of money. Sladen is going to be walking away from probably $1.5 million that they put in just a matter of a few months. An amazing thing that when somebody walk away from that kind of money. We have probably $4.5 million. We're not walking away. We feel very good about it. It's not just that we want to get our money back. This is a very good deal. If you think it's a bad situation, you usually want to cut your losses and say, all right, we made a mistake. We don't believe that at all. It's a very good project, and we're going to continue with it. We just need the support of this commission and the opportunity to repackage it so that we can bring other players in.
Follow up to that, 2 questions. So Sladen has $1.5 million of skin in the game that they're going to have to walk away from, like earnest money or something. The other question I have, and I bet you probably don't want to hear this, but going back to a point that actually Commissioner Cedar brought up a while ago in regards to tying that property into the Oregon City Shopping Center. Does anybody know what's going on with that? And would this be an opportunity to step back and reevaluate if that could be better tied into the Oregon City Shopping Center?
We have a continuing dialogue with them, and the main reason is that there is a requirement under the design of the apartments to have an emergency exit that cuts across their property. I think yesterday we submitted all of the drawings to the city to show how that would work. We've had conversations with the Oregon City League person. They wanted to make sure that it was part of the city. Tony had a conversation with the Oregon City people. We haven't brought it up that here's an opportunity, but I did exactly what you, I think I went back and looked at all the drawings that we had done where we showed full connectivity and expansion and the potential for not only taking part of the Parker property and putting additional parking there, but even doing a double-decker parking there that would expand their number of square footage, almost double it. So there's still that potential, but it takes a very heavy hitter to make that change because you've got a whole bunch of things. You've got the loan that's existing on there that has a prepayment penalty of, I think it was $4 or $5 million. You have an overpriced purchase price, which they brought it to the table, and then you have leases that you have to buy out. All those combination of things become a big number. If there was a way to get support from the city to help, I don't like the idea of always having to go out and put your hand out to make a deal work. We ordinarily don't do that. So that's a possibility, but it is overburdened with economics right now.
Is that 1.5 million to Parker then? Is that who gets that earnest money? Or who gets that? It's left on the table for somebody.
That's a combination of all of the pre-development works that have been done for the architectural engineering. It's primarily civil engineering and architecture. And it's part of a project management as we move through the last 6 months.
It's not cash that can be reallocated somewhere else.
No, it's spent.
It's spent.
It's in the game.
Do you have any other questions? I'm not seeing any here. I'm assuming that we can't really make any kind of decision without public notice in another meeting as far as extensions or anything. I mean,
it really wasn't our expectation. I think what we would prefer is just a general statement that go do your homework, meet with staff, come up with a bona fide plan that is something that is understandable, and we will do that.
Okay, well, I mean, I see people shaking heads yes mostly. Commissioner, decision?
I actually did want to hear from Mr. Parker. I know
I think we're invited Mr.
Parker to chat. I actually contemplated, Mr. Parker, and have an opportunity to share with you what occurred. And I also wasn't anticipating any particular direction or action from the commission tonight. I just wanted to make sure that the folks that are involved in all this were here to talk to you directly.
We appreciate having the up-to-date information. So, very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Parker. I live in Scappoose, Oregon.
Okay. Welcome.
As you hear, the check didn't clear the bank. We were expecting a payment from Sladen on a note that we took as part payment when they closed on our property, and that note or that payment did not come through on the 15th. I was pre-warned by Ed that it probably wasn't going to come through, and to the disappointment of the rest of the family and myself, we didn't get it. Many discussions back and forth with Ed and the attorneys as to what we are going to do. I guess what I'd like to assure all of you is that we are partners. The way I look at this, the way the family is looking at it, you guys invested monies and purchased part of our property, and we want to sell the rest of it. We want to see it developed. The family's been here for 50 or 60 plus years, more than that, investing in this community, and want to continue to do so. And I guess the best thing that we can do is try to work together to get it developed. I have instructed the attorneys to start foreclosure proceedings. We're going to notify Sladen they're in default on Monday, and we're going to do the legal process. The attorneys can assure you that that takes time. We have issues within the family. We're also not moving forward on the rivers, the landfill property at the pace that we would like to be doing, but we have some possibilities there too. And our investment in the city hasn't changed. We want to continue to work with you guys, and we'd like you to work with us.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from the? We really appreciate your coming, and I'm sorry.
I had to borrow money for gas to get here.
Well, maybe I could get you a ride home. Commissioner West.
I'd like to, Chair Slacker, really appreciate hearing from both of you, and I feel that this project is so important to our community. It's a catalyst and anchor project for the redevelopment of our north end and our Main Street and all the recreational opportunities, all the jobs it'll provide. It's just really important. I don't want to give up on it at this point either. So I appreciate hearing that you aren't walking and that we're going to keep going forward.
Anything else? Thank you very much. And Mr. Fraser, you're finished.
Sorry, I'm not finished, but I think the city attorney wanted to give you a real quick update on Black Point and litigation.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair Slack. And this involved Sue Nelson, who was one of the borrowers on the $200,000 loan back in, I believe, it was 2005. And we had entered into an agreement where she was going to make relatively minor payments. She's now defaulted on that and is not making any payments. And what we want to do is bring a recommendation to you that when we entered into that arrangement, we got her to sign a confession of judgment that we would hold off from filing. Now that she's not following through on, I think, the third try, we just want to go ahead and enter the confession of judgment. It's going to take a little more expense to do that. And in all likelihood, there's not much there. It's, getting blood from the stone. But there's a possibility that she inherits money, that she wins a lottery. Who knows? There may be money somewhere in the future. And by having a recorded judgment, it can help us to acquire that. And we just wanted to get your approval to go ahead and enter the confession of judgment.
Commissioner West is on the top there, but she's not in green.
I was just curious about how much it is. How much she owes. Let's see. She owed, she was one of the co-signers for the $200,000 was the original loan. I believe she was one of 3 co-signers. So she was liable for all of that. There was a payment plan that was going to require her to pay, I believe, $500 per total $500 for a period of time that would reach $12,000 would be the amount that we'd recover from Mrs. Nelson.
We're doing all this for $12,000.
Well, the judgment would be for the full $200,000.
Okay,
yeah, I mean that's what she's liable for.
I'm not sure. I got Commissioner to see it, and then Commissioner Norris.
Mine's actually on the previous topic, and I hit the button while I had the wrong blue square on agenda rather than on the floor. So I will defer to Mayor Norris, and then I'll go after.
My question is just to follow up to that one. How much attorney's fees will this cost?
The estimate was about 3 to 5 hours to do all the work, enter the judgment, which works out to about $1,000 would be a rough guess. It could very well be throwing good money after that, but it's sort of the risk of walking away from it because she is not following through on her agreements or doing a little bit more with the possibility, however unlikely, that we have a judgment in hand if some additional assets come forward.
Now, we did walk away from one of them because the attorney seems to be higher than the positive judgment, right?
Do you need a formal?
Just no objection. Just ask for an objection.
Are there any objections moving forward? Seeing none. Okay. And Commissioner Seaton.
Okay, I need to go back to the COVID agenda item. And I'm going to throw down a gentleman's challenge to Commissioner Crocker to second my motion. He kindly reminded folks that a while back I had raised the point that it would be really good, and in fact it's in the plan, in the economic strategy documentation, that a residential development of the Cove apartment complex be connected to the Oregon City Shopping Center. And the motion I'd like to make is, just to give some background, is I've heard, and I think I've raised this point in the past, that I've heard a lot of people talk about what the situation is with the Oregon City Shopping Center. But I've always heard it secondhand. I've never heard from the folks at the Oregon City Shopping who actually own the property what their situation is, what their plans are, and how we can engage the folks along the Oregon City Shopping Center. You know, there may be opportunities that we don't know about because we've never really engaged them. So, and this, the other point is that Mr. Darrow mentioned that there were scenarios done with graphics and everything about how these projects could dovetail and how there could be connections between the Oregon City Shopping Center. And I've never seen those drawings, and I do know that, you know, because the Urban Renewal Commission paid for all the work product, we own that material, and we have an agreement that we have access to it whenever we want to. The motion I would like to make is twofold. I'd like to make a motion directing staff to do two things. One is to start engaging the owners of the Oregon City Shopping Center in a dialogue, including inviting them here just for a friendly get-to-know-each-other discussion about their shopping center, what they plan for it, and hearing straight from them as the owners what the situation is with things like the leases and the prepayment penalties, etc. And the second thing I'd like to add to the motion to direct staff to do is to secure from Mr. Darrow and Mr. Tyler all of the graphics and architectural renderings from the past about how the scenarios were to connect the apartment complex to the Oregon City Shopping Center. So we can review that and have that as part of any discussion we engage the owners of the Oregon City Shopping Center in.
Okay, I'm not sure that needs a motion. I think if we all agree, we can just ask staff to bring that back, or report back, Mr. Fraser, at the next answer in the renewal meeting.
I don't think we need a motion to, if you want us to invite the owners of the Oregon City Shopping Center, who I've not met either, we can invite them to come here and speak to you. And the second one was, you wanted to see a work product, which I think is
secure all the architectural drawings and engineering drawings that had been done in the past that show scenarios connecting the Cove residential project part.
If we have them, they're public records, so that's, I mean, anyone can.
Let me comment on that. When Kaiser did not move forward with the project, we went out to, I think, 3 commercial developers to try to convince them it would be a good idea to buy the center and redevelop it. I did all the drawings for that. They were not a cost to the city. Those are drawings which I had done. I don't know if you know my background, but every project that we do, I do the preliminary concepting drawings, and then I see if they economically work, and then we hire the third-party contractors and consultants to do the work. So I have those drawings myself. I'm obviously more than willing to share those with you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, is that okay? Commissioner Oates, did you have something?
Okay. Well, you kind of steal my thunder. In the spirit of actually agreeing with Commissioner Aceto on something, I wanted to second a non-secondable. Another question I'd like to ask is, I hear a lot of rumors too about Oregon City Shopping Center, like lease rates are getting jacked up, and there's empty spaces, and that there's movement going on, and I think it'd be great to at least engage. I mean, who knows? If we could come up with a plan that would increase the property value of that piece of property, because it could tie in, if it could double the value of the property, I don't know why they wouldn't at least want to discuss.
I think we're headed that way with what the direction gave staff, and I think the mayor's going to be wanting us to get out of here. So if we have.
Well, I'll second it.
Well, no, he didn't. Anyway, we're adjourned. Thank you.